What if the Mongols conquered all of Europe in 1242, autumn 1243? The Rhine. On the western edge of Europe, a Mongol rider pulls his horse to a halt. Behind him are thousands more: cavalry, engineers, interpreters, and tribute collectors. Ahead lie ruined villages, frightened cities, and the gray water of the Rhine. In our history, this river became part of the western frontier of medieval Europe. In this history, it is no frontier at all. It is the interior of a single empire. Welcome to What If, Alternative History. Today we imagine a moment when Europe almost did not survive. In the spring of 1241, two European armies were destroyed, one in Poland at Legnica and another in Hungary at Mohi. The Mongol Empire stood only a few campaigns away from Vienna, Paris, and perhaps London. Then everything stopped. Why? To answer that, we need to go back to 1227, when Genghis Khan died. His son Ogedei inherited an empire that already stretched across much of Asia. Under him, Batu Khan, a gifted commander and the nephew of Genghis, was ordered to conquer the West. Batu's force was not simply an army of mounted archers. It combined steppe mobility with Chinese siege engineering, Muslim crossbow expertise, Russian cavalry tactics, scouts, messengers, and craftsmen from across the empire. This was not one nation's war. It was the most adaptable military machine in the world. In 1237, Batu began in earnest. Within 3 years, Mongol armies had crushed the principalities of Kievan Rus. Then, in April 1241, came two dramatic victories. Duke Henry the Pious died at Legnica. Hungary's King Bela IV fled to Croatia. Germany's eastern border stood wide open. Then, on December 11, 1241, far away in Karakoram, Ogedei Khan died. Mongol custom demanded that princes and leading commanders return for the Kurultai, the assembly that would select a new great Khan. Batu withdrew. The war stopped. Europe received a gift of time that changed history. But now, imagine that Batu does not leave. He sees Europe as an unfinished objective. He sends word to Karakoram, "Give me 1 more year," and he gets it. In the spring of 1242, Batu moves west again. The first target is Austria and Bohemia. Vienna, still a strategic river city on the Danube, rather than the great imperial capital that would become, falls after weeks of siege. Bohemia's King Wenceslas accepts vassal status. He keeps his throne, but pays tribute and supplies troops. Hungary, already broken, becomes a direct Mongol province. Poland consolidates its status as a chain of vassal territories. Prussia and Livonia negotiate alliances, choosing survival over resistance. The Baltic remains open, but now under joint Mongol and Russian influence. The greatest test is Germany. The Holy Roman Empire looks powerful on a map, but it is fragmented in practice. Princes, bishops, dukes, and free cities all protect their own interests. When the call for resistance comes, arguments spread faster than armies. The Mongols exploit every division, but Bavaria submits after a short campaign. Saxony bargains for favorable terms. Along the Rhine, merchant cities calculate that preserving trade may be worth more than fighting a war they cannot win. One by one, local rulers become Mongol subjects. They keep titles, courts, and estates, but their authority depends on tribute flowing east. By 1247, the Rhine is no longer the edge of a threatened Germany. It is a vital road inside a Mongol-controlled Europe. What about France and England? Complete occupation of every fortress and island would be difficult, but conquest does not always require occupation. Mongol envoys arrive in Paris with a simple choice: tribute and autonomy, or war. Louis IX is young, France is divided, and no united European coalition appears. France accepts a humiliating settlement, at least for a generation. Across the Channel, Henry III of England faces conflict with his own barons. London's merchants fear the loss of continental trade. England pays tribute in exchange for peace and access to the new Eurasian market. Italy makes a different calculation. Venice and Genoa understand that commerce can survive under many flags. Their ships, warehouses, and bankers become essential to a network, linking the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Silk Road, and the cities of China. Pope Innocent IV sends envoys to Karakoram to secure the survival of Christian churches. The churches survive, but the political power of the papacy is weakened. What happens next? First, communications. The Mongols had already built the yam, a postal and intelligence system of relay stations, horses, and couriers. In this timeline, the yam extends from Karakoram to Kiev, from the Danube to the Rhine, and from the Rhine to Lisbon. Merchants, diplomats, officials, and scholars move across Eurasia with a speed medieval Europe had never seen. Second, technology. Gunpowder knowledge, paper production, compasses, printing methods, medical texts, and astronomical ideas circulate more quickly. Europe does not suddenly become modern, but exchange begins earlier on a greater scale and inside institutions designed to move people and information across enormous distances. Third, Christianity changes. Mongol rulers are not always tolerant, but they often protect several faiths when it supports imperial stability. Christian churches in Europe are not destroyed, yet they no longer rule politics as completely as before. Latin Christianity, Eastern Orthodoxy, Islam, Buddhism, and the spiritual traditions of the steppe all meet within the same political world. By the 14th century, Europe is no longer simply Western or Eastern. It has become a borderland in the middle of Eurasia, and what does not happen? The age of discovery would not look the same. Europe sought sea routes to Asia partly because distance, political barriers, and middlemen made overland trade expensive. But in this world, Asia is already connected to Europe by an imperial network. The incentive to gamble everything on Atlantic voyages is weaker. Columbus might never receive royal backing. Vasco da Gama could remain an obscure sailor. The Spanish conquest of the Americas, transatlantic empires, and the vast exchange of peoples, plants, diseases, and wealth might unfold differently. Later, or perhaps not at all, European nationalism would also take another path. France, England, Spain, and the German states might still emerge, but from inside a shared imperial framework. Their identities could become less purely ethnic and more political. Provinces with local laws, languages, and rulers linked by taxes, roads, trade, and distant imperial authority. Of course, no empire stays united forever. The Mongol Empire in real history fractured through succession disputes, competing khanates, vast distances, and the difficulty of ruling many societies. The same would happen here. By the late 13th century, Europe might become a semi-independent European Khanate, Mongol in name, increasingly local in practice, and dependent on alliances with European elites. But even if the empire breaks, the transformation remains. Europe has spent decades inside a Eurasian system. Its roads point east as naturally as west. Its cities trade through the Black Sea and Central Asia. Its rulers think about power in continental terms. Its churches, markets, and armies are shaped by contacts that once seemed impossible. That is the real lesson of this alternate history. The medieval world was not predetermined. In December 1241, a death in Karakoram redirected events thousands of miles away. Had Batu remained in Europe for only one more campaign season, the map of the world might have changed beyond recognition. Europe could have become more connected, more commercially dynamic, and more technologically intertwined with each other. It could also have become more brutal, more heavily taxed, and more vulnerable to the violence of imperial politics. It would not necessarily have been better. It would simply have been profoundly different. What do you think? Would a Mongol Europe have created an earlier global age, or would the empire have collapsed before it could truly reshape the continent? Subscribe for the next episode of What If Alternative History. Until then, history is never as inevitable as it looks.